Hello, everyone, and especially consultants. I'm Liz Stebley, the founder and chief advocate of the Professional Independent Consultants of America, which is a really long name. We call it PICA for short. Welcome to my monthly Facebook Live, where we talk about how to be truly successful as independent consultants. And today's topic, I want to focus on being truly independent. There's a couple of reasons why I want to talk about this, especially today of all times. But first, a little bit of foundational context, what it means to be truly independent, and why. So what I mean by that and why it's particularly important is you want to be sure that you're paid on a 1099 tax basis as a small business or on a business-to-business basis, and not as a temporary employee paid on a W-2 basis. And there's two critical reasons for this. The first is you'll lower your effective tax rate because you'll be able to take advantage of business owner tax deductions. If you try to do that by attaching a W-2 pay stub to your tax return, you're very likely going to invite an audit, and those deductions will be disallowed. So the 1099 is really important so that you can take your tax deductions. That lowers your effective tax rate. That's important. The second key reason is because you, as a business owner, you can participate in better retirement options, not betterment, but better retirement options. And once again, this lowers your effective tax rate because the more money you put into your own retirement account, it lowers your taxable income, and long-term, that leads to more profitability and success. So that's why the informal PICA motto is friends don't let friends W-2, and that's why it's particularly important to stay independent. So it's one thing to call yourself independent, but it's another to actually qualify as an independent contractor when you're doing business with a corporation. And the reason this is really on my mind a lot in the last week is because just last week, on April 30th actually, the California Supreme Court issued a new ruling about what it takes to qualify as an independent consultant, or an independent worker, sorry. So there were three new guidelines that came out of a result of this ruling in the state of California. They've already nicknamed it the ABC test. So the first part, A, is who controls and directs the work, or who has the right to control and direct the work. This is nothing new in terms of qualifying as an independent contractor. The second item, or the B in the ABC test, has to do with the type of work, and is it a part of the usual course of business for the company that's doing the hiring. So for example, let's say it's a trucking company. They're obviously in the business of getting goods from point A to point B. Their drivers are an integral part of that business, so they would need to be paid as employees, not as independent contractors. So there are some nuances to that, of course, but as consultants, generally speaking, we are not doing work that's part of the usual course of a company's business. But the third part of the ABC test, or item C, is new. It's a new guideline, but established by the Supreme Court of California. And C has to do with whether or not the worker is customarily engaged in an independently established trade or business. So this is really, really important. For years, a lot of independent consultants have been able to sort of like get away with being sort of, I don't know what I want to say, have gotten away with kind of being casual about being an independent consultant. And because of this court ruling now, we're going to have to really up our game in terms of our business structure. So what it means to be customarily engaged in, you need to have proof or evidence that you are a legitimate business. Okay, so there's lots of easy ways to do this. Some a little bit more complicated than others, but first and foremost, you need to get a business license. Okay, that's pretty easy. You can do it online. Second, you need to set up a business structure like an LLC. You should probably also get a professional domain name and email account. So for example, don't be, I'll use my business partner's name, henschelconsulting@gmail.com. Instead, you're going to want to have at henschelconsulting.com. So you need your own domain and your own professional email address. The other item that you need is probably a website or at least a web page using that domain name, and that shows that you're proof, it's like proof of advertising, right? So it shows that you are customarily engaged in being an independent consultant and providing consulting or coaching services or whatever it is that you're doing. So none of these things are hard. They take a little bit of time, and it's certainly stuff that we cover on PICA's website and in our webinars and things like that. So, but because the California Supreme Court ruling last week, it's going to be vitally important because companies are going to be scared, right? They don't want to, if they're caught misclassifying a worker as an independent contractor when they should have been paid as an employee, the fines are horrific. So they're going to be as conservative as possible when it comes to hiring independent workers and independent consultants. So you need to be a business, not just an individual. So think of it this way. There's an old saying that if it walks like a duck, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Okay, I know it's a weird analogy, but it's kind of easy to remember. You need to look like a business, be a business, act like a business, and not an individual. So that's the bottom line when it comes to the California Supreme Court ruling. Granted, that's only the state of California, but the other states look to California in terms of sort of the direction of how to interpret the law. So anyway, that's the good news and the bad news. We need to up our game, but it's not really bad news for independent consultants. It's still possible to be paid as an independent worker. We just need to prove it. So let me shift gears a little bit because over the last couple of weeks too, I've gotten a couple of questions submitted to me about sort of being related to being truly independent. So the first question, and I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. It says, do I need to get a business license in all the different cities and counties where I have clients? The definition of what constitutes transacting business in a specific location varies by city, and in some cases, it's a little vague. Does meeting with a client on a regular basis count as transacting business in that city? Okay, so here's my answer. Technically, you are supposed to have a business license any place where you operate or do business. Realistically, that doesn't really happen. So, for example, this makes me think of like a business like Accenture, right? So they're doing at any given time, what, 10,000 different projects in 10,000 different cities. I find it a little bit difficult to imagine that they actually have a business license in every one of those cities. What's more likely is that they have a business license wherever they have a physical location. So that's sort of the interpretation of the rule, and that's what most people in businesses go with, is if they have a physical location, they have a business license in that city or county. I did a little bit more digging though, and I did find a pretty good answer, a short answer on entrepreneur.com to this question, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to mess it up. Okay, so most business filings are done at the state or county level depending on the nature of your business entity, meaning if you're a sole proprietor or an LLC. Usually, although not always, a single filing is sufficient for you to conduct business anywhere in the state in which you file. So, for example, if you have an LLC in California, you're probably okay. And your business license should be in the city and or county where you conduct your business. Like, so if you work out of your home, you should have a business license in that location, for that location. Okay, the second part of the entrepreneur.com answer was, if you are conducting business in more than one state, the answer will depend on the level of contact you have with the other states. So if your business has a physical presence in the other states, most states will require a file similar to the one in your home state. So that has to do with the physical location again. If you merely have customers in a particular state with whom you do business by phone, email, regular mail, or occasional face-to-face meetings, consultants, you most likely will not have to file in that state. An attorney who practices in this area should be able to help you comply with all applicable filing requirements. So that answers the question about, do I need multiple business licenses? Only if you have multiple offices would be my practical advice, certainly not legal advice. Did I mention that my lawyer said that I need to be very careful that I'm not giving legal advice? That's why I have my little sign here. I am not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV, and I don't give legal advice. I'm just a consultant that gives practical and pragmatic tips. Okay, so here's question number 2 I got last week. I recently worked through an agency, and their contract included a non-compete clause that said I wasn't going to be able to work with that client on my own or through any other agency for a period of 2 years. Is this enforceable? Okay, I asked PICA's general counsel about this, and he said, although I shouldn't be giving legal advice, well, actually, that was the first thing he said. He said, you shouldn't be giving legal advice. But the second thing he said is, it depends on several things, like what state you're in, whether or not you were paid as an independent contractor on a 1099 tax basis or the W-2 tax basis, and of course the actual language of the contract. In general, though, if you were hired as an independent contractor, paid on 1099 basis, these clauses, like the one in this question, are not enforceable, but it depends on the state. So non-compete clauses are a state law issue and governed by state law, so it's going to vary state to state. In California, generally they're not enforceable. In other states, they do tend to be enforceable. So aside from the actual non-compete clause, though, you need to be careful because regardless of the non-compete clause, the law still, I'm reading this. The law still prevents you from using an agency's or an employer's info to go after new business because you may be violating a trade secret or confidential information. So let's talk about this. You're like at a you're doing work through an agency with a company. I don't know. I'll make this up. Let's say Genentech. And you're doing really good work for them, and they say, you know, we really appreciate what you've done. We've got some other work over in this other division. We think you'd be a really great fit for it. Are you interested? Now, there's an ethical question and the legal question. The ethical question is, do you take that back to the agency you're doing work for? That would probably be the right thing to do. But legally, are you required to? That's a different question. But I don't give legal advice. As a general rule of thumb, think of it this way. If the client approaches you to do more work, you have definitely not used a trade secret or confidential information to get that work. They've approached you. If you ask them, hey, do you have any work that you think I could do on my own, you know, and maybe cut out that agency fee, that's very bad. Don't do that. So, this is a tricky area, the non-compete clauses and how to go after work and violating confidential information. I encourage you to participate in one of PICA's sessions that's hosted by our general counsel, who actually is a lawyer and a Harvard-educated lawyer at that, so he can give legal advice. You'll find those on our website under the events page, and it's called Keeping It Legal. We alternate between webinars and live Q&A events with PICA's general counsel. So anyway, that covers the 2 questions that I received related to being truly independent. And so all of this, you know, the California Supreme Court ruling and these other couple of questions all reminds me that there's still always more to learn and to watch out for when it comes to being a truly independent small business. The good news is that although you are truly independent, you don't have to go it alone. So PICA is definitely here to help in 3 particular key ways. One is we have a terrific partnership with LegalZoom. So if you need attorney advice or you need contracts and forms, your PICA membership will get you a discount on live attorney support at LegalZoom. So that's one really key way. We also give a discount on setting up and incorporating through using LegalZoom service. So definitely that's worth checking out. The second way that PICA can help is through the content on our website. There's a lot of really rich content in there, and I've heard from people who have been independent 5-7 years. They say, oh my God, I didn't even know all those nuances when it came to contracting. So there's 3 different resource areas that are useful, probably depending on where you are in the life cycle. One is called being a business. So if you're just starting out, or you've been working primarily through agencies, you're going to want to check out that section, being a business. The second area that's really important is legal and contracting, which is probably useful no matter where you are, how long you've been independent. And the third area is vendor compliance, which vendor compliance is about when you get hired by a client, their HR department or procurement department is going to start asking you a lot of questions like, how long have you been in business? Do you have a business license? Do you have 3 or more employees? And so that's what vendor compliance is all about. Which reminds me, the third way that PICA can help is particularly this Friday, actually, I'm leading a webinar on how to navigate vendor compliance. I run that webinar once a month, and there's a series of questions that they're going to ask you to verify if you're truly independent. How you interpret those questions and how you answer those questions will make a big difference. So that's what we cover in the webinar, how to navigate vendor compliance. And then, of course, our other webinars around keeping it legal are really valuable too. So that's the important thing to remember. Remember the duck analogy. You got to look like a business, act like a business, be a business in order to qualify to be paid as a business. And that leads to why friends don't let friends W2. Okay, so more resources. I brought visual aids. PICA's website, PICAnetwork.org. I'm not sure if I'm holding that up right. It's very hard to look at yourself on a camera. And because you made it all the way through my live Facebook feed video, we've got a discount code. Ding, ding, ding. So don't use the spaces. I just did this so it'd be easier for you to read. 18FB20A. So when this is good for 20% off at any level of PICA membership. So just put this in at the end without the spaces, and you'll get 20% off whatever level you join. So that's it. And let's be truly independent and as successful as possible. See you next month. Bye.